I feel like it's been forever. Welcome in, everybody. Kendall Smith and Jack Veltri. This is GC Live here on Gamecock Central. Happy Wednesday. Happy New Year to all of you. We have not been on the show, you and I, since before the Citrus Bowl. So it has been a minute. Let us know how you're doing in the comments. Jack, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Kendall. It has been quite a little bit since we've done a GC Live show on a Wednesday, you and I, but it's good to be back. It's starting to finally feel like the new year. Like I feel like last week was like the free trial for the new year, and like you were just seeing how it was and all that. But now it's like, okay, like it's finally set in. We're back in Columbia from Orlando and all that. So I know we both were out there. Did you have a good time at the game?
I did. I had a really good time at the game. It was beautiful weather. I mean, obviously, the result of the game was a little bit disappointing, but at the end of the day, it was an entertaining game. It was gorgeous in Florida. It was very nice. I'm very thankful that I had the opportunity to go down and to enjoy it. So, yeah, I enjoyed myself. Did you enjoy it? You got a day off after the game, which is nice.
I did. So I ended up I texted you about it, I think, on the first. We both went to the parks, obviously. You went to Epcot. I went to Magic Kingdom and Hollywood Studios, and that was a absolute blast. I would have loved to go to the other parks too, but it's a lot for one day.
Yeah.
So the drive back on the second, though, stunk. And then having to go to Mississippi on the third was like, Monday was the reset day, but you know what? I had a great time out there. Seriously, despite the loss, it was an absolute blast, and really glad to have made the trip.
Well, we'll get into talking about the Citrus Bowl a little bit just because Jack and I haven't had the chance to talk about it. We'll do a little bit of an end of the season kind of recap, talk about our thoughts from the season, if our expectations were met, etc. And then I already see a comment about it. And here we will talk about the transfer portal as well.
We're gonna get to it.
Some big additions for South Carolina in the last couple of days. But before we get into all of that, Jack, we have a wonderful presenting sponsor of GC Live.
As always, Kendall, right above us here, Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans. If you are in the market for a home or you need help with your mortgage, but you have no idea where to begin, Clint Hammond can help you out. He can take you through the process step by step. He's been in the mortgage industry for more than 20 years. He's a lifelong Gamecock fan, and he's also a longtime supporter of Gamecock Central. So you'll see him right above us here on all of our live streams for years now. So if you're interested, 803-422-6797 is the number to call. The NMLS number for him is 71597. Or you can go to ClintHammond.com, and that info will be right above us here all stream long.
Okay, Jack, let's talk about the Citrus Bowl just for a couple minutes here. Don't want to talk about it for too long. Obviously, It's been a week now since South Carolina played in the game, but you were obviously there. You were there all week, like the day after Christmas leading up to New Year's Eve, which was the game. So I want to go back to that, and then we'll obviously get into the game. But what was your experience like being there for an entire week? What was South Carolina's schedule like? Obviously, you took people through it on Gamecock Central, but I'd love to talk about it here on the show for a second.
Yeah, just the real quick version of it. And you guys, if you want to go see more in depth on it, I have vlogs all on Gamecock Central's YouTube page. So right after you're done with this live,
I love that you kept the vlogs going.
Yeah, it was a blast. Like the game itself with the game vlog wasn't great. You know, it stinks that they lost, but seriously, still a great week out there. The team was practicing out in Celebration, which is like right nearby Disney. So that was a blast. The weather was great. Only dealt with rain once the entire week. And seriously, like it was a nice time out there. Like I really don't have too much to say on it. Like it was always busy with football and stuff, but I mean, it was wonderful. The hospitality was great out in Florida, and nothing but good times out there.
No rain until like an hour and a half before kickoff. And then, of course, there was rain as soon as Gamecock Walk was happening. There was so much rain. I was like not having it there for a second. But luckily it went away just in time for the game. Beautiful weather for the game. Obviously, things not going South Carolina's way. A couple of things went wrong in that game. But for you, Jack, from your perspective, watching it, you've seen him play all week. You've been at every single game this year. What do you think it really was that went wrong for South Carolina that ultimately led them to a loss against Illinois?
I think just not being able to finish drives. And what I mean by that is South Carolina was able to march down the field more times than not and get into the red zone in some cases the problem was once they got down there, it was kind of like, okay, like they've gotten here, they just couldn't finish, right? And they kicked a field goal on their first drive of the game where it felt like, okay, they're going to go down and score. They forced a 3 and out, and they're looking great, but they got a field goal. And then second quarter, they get down the field again. They have to settle for a field goal. Instead, they try to fake field goal, which whether you like the call or not, I think it was a well-designed play. It could have worked. It's just it didn't. Kai Kroger's throw to Boogie Huntley was a little behind. I don't even know if behind is the right word, but just it wasn't the perfect pass. And I think that's what it needed to be, and it wasn't. And so that didn't work. Turnover on downs. You got another field goal opportunity later in the first half, right before going to the locker room, actually, and Alex Herrera's kick doinked off the upright. So really a struggle there. And then fast forward to later in the game, you get a touchdown with Oscar Attaway to take the lead, and then Illinois takes the lead back. And then you have a chance to try to take the lead in the final minutes. And on fourth down, Lenore Sellers' pass to Josh Simon was a little off target, not right in Simon's breadbasket. He definitely could have caught it, but the ball goes in and out of his hands. It's a turnover on downs, and that was basically the capping off point in the 21-17 loss. A game that was definitely felt like South Carolina could have won. Didn't have its fastball stuff in that game for sure. But I thought they gave themselves enough of a chance to try to get the win.
Yeah, it was definitely an entertaining game. I mean, people keep asking me, like, are you sad you went down there? South Carolina lost. And I'm like, honestly, no, I'm not. I mean, it was a great experience. It was so fun to watch them play. And the game in and of itself was very interesting. I was actually sitting behind one of the end zones that Lenora Sellers threw on the final offensive play of the game. I was like in that end zone a couple rows up. So I was able to see that all happen, unfold right in front of me. What I didn't necessarily see happen, and we of course have to bring up this moment because it was the most viral moment of the entire game, was the illegal substitution sign, the little tiff that broke out on the field. There was some drama that was happening. Shane Beamer, very, very unhappy in that particular situation. All I heard were people around me getting really riled up about something. I look down on the field, I see both teams kind of coming out towards each other, and I'm like, what is going on? I literally had to go to Twitter. I'm like scrolling, or I guess X. I'm scrolling on X, just trying to figure out what is going on. From your perspective in the press box, what did you see? Did you know what was happening?
Not initially in the moment. I don't think anyone did. All we saw is you see there's an injury timeout. Bielma goes over to check on his injured player, whatever, the normal stuff, and you think nothing of it. And then all of a sudden you start seeing some commotion, and come to find out, Bielma did the T-bar motion with his arms, extended out and pointed at South Carolina, and Beamer took exception to that. You see him being held back by like 3 of his staffers and stuff. And I've never seen Shane more heated than he was in this game in particular. Like, we've seen him fired up before and stuff, but not to like this level, to where it's like, okay, like 3 guys need to hold him back, or else this could get really tense. And after the game, Bielma basically clarified, saying that, he was kind of a little bit upset about the fact that South Carolina, ran a little bit of a weird kickoff return where Juju McDowell did the T-bar motion, basically signaling, all right, South Carolina's probably going to take a touchback here. He catches the ball, throws it across the end zone to Nick Harbor, who runs it out for 25 yards. So Bielma was kind of ticked off about that, and how maybe guys could get hurt and stuff when that little trickery happens, but it's not illegal, so no problems there. But obviously Shane and his team were kind of mad about the whole illegal substitution thing, where Illinois subbing out players every few plays right as the play clock goes down all the way. So a lot of drama in this game. This was definitely at the top of the list, but yeah, kind of once you hear from the coaches and stuff, you get more clarification on what really happened.
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting moment, to say the least, but it made the game, probably very entertaining to those watching on TV. I mean, Shane was certainly fired up in that moment. I was able to watch back the clips almost immediately as I was sitting in the stands, thanks to the power of the Wi-Fi that was at Camping World Stadium. I appreciate that, definitely. But yeah, the moment of the game I think that people will remember the most was that one, and just how hectic and how crazy that was. Obviously, the game not going the way that South Carolina wanted it to, but still a great experience for the team. And coming off of a good season for South Carolina, I mean, there's a lot that would have, could have, should have happened. And we can talk about all of those hypotheticals all day long. We could do a million podcasts talking about all of the things that could have happened or would have happened at South Carolina beat LSU when they made the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. But I just want to talk about this from a kind of general perspective, Jack. In South Carolina's season as a whole, we did a podcast actually to start the season with myself, you, Chris Clark, and Wes Mitchell. We just kind of talk about season expectations, what we thought would happen. As you look at this season, what South Carolina did, how would you say they met your expectations and did not meet your expectations?
They met almost pretty much all the expectations. They were so much better than they were in 2023. And I think that was the goal. Number one is that, I think a lot of people expected South Carolina to be better than the 5-7 season they had in 23, but not by much. Maybe making a bowl game, whatever, 6 wins, 7 wins. I think I had them winning 8 games this year, and I felt like that was even not a likelihood possibility. Like, it was going to be tough, and they came out of the gates 3-3 on the year, and they just lost games to Ole Miss and Alabama, and you're like, oh man, like this team really could it be kind of like what it was last year? Could it kind of go back to being that lull? But once that Oklahoma game happened, once you routed them and won that game convincingly, it set the wheels in motion for some really fun next few weeks of football where you win 6 in a row and stuff. And yeah, I think they met a lot of the expectations for sure. Definitely exceeded a lot in many cases, where you win 9 games for the first time since 2013. It's been, 2017 under Muschamp. So it's been a while since they've gotten to this kind of moment where you can have a chance to win 10 games. Lenora Sellers took a lot of steps forward in his first year as the starting quarterback. I thought your defense was, historic, quite frankly. They had a great year. I think you got a lot of production out of your offensive line as the year went on, because this was a group that was, quite frankly, horrible to watch in 23, but they got better as the year went on in 24, even though it wasn't perfect at times. So overall, look, there are a lot of areas you can talk about improvement, but just from a team standpoint, South Carolina got a lot better this year, and it sets them up for a future where we don't know what's going to happen, obviously, but it leads you to believe there's going to be higher expectations in 2025, and they're going to have the possibility to go on a little run here where this isn't just a one-year thing. This can become, the rest of the decade and so forth.
Yeah, laying the groundwork certainly for years to come. And Jack, you were able to be at every game for South Carolina this year, which is certainly a huge perk of covering the team. So I'm curious from your perspective, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like a specific play or anything, but the team's best moment. Their best moment this year could be after a game. It could be something that happened during a game. You can give me a couple of these. I know I'm literally putting Jack on the spot with this. We did not talk about these questions, but What do you think their best moment was of the year?
Easily the beating Clemson. I think that was for sure the crowning jewel moment of the year, where it's like, it's the last game of the regular season and you go out with a bang. You complete the comeback victory to beat Clemson in Death Valley. That for sure has got to be number one. Like, just the emotions of that game for the players and Beamer and the coaching staff. Like, that was a pretty cool game to be at. I think other than that, I really enjoyed both the A&M and Missouri victories. The A&M one was great in the fact that it was a curb stomping in the second half, and everyone stormed the field and stuff, and that was always a night you'll remember. But the Missouri victory was cool in the sense that you have the lead early, and then you blow it not once but twice, and then Rocket Sanders does Rocket Sanders things, catches a shovel pass of all things, and scores the game-winning touchdown with like 15 seconds left to go. So an absolute crazy season for sure. I mean, like, there's so many individual plays and moments and stuff that you could really pinpoint. But for me, those are like the three. And I know they're games and stuff, but overall, just the feelings and the emotions of it all for everyone involved, Those are going to be the three that stand out to me, which also happened to coincide with that 6-game winning streak South Carolina went on.
Yeah, I think, a theme for the group this year was just overall their grit, the way that they were able to continue to keep going in the face of adversity. And that wasn't always easy for the team, especially after a really tough loss against LSU. You keep on going. And when you lose to a team like Ole Miss, and then you struggle with the Alabama loss, then you come back and you put together such a great finish to your season. I think that's absolutely huge. The Missouri game really stands out to me as a whole, and it still might be my favorite from the year. I mean, I loved the Clemson win, obviously, and the way that game ended specifically by intercepting Cade Klubnik's pass. I mean, that could have been an entirely different game had that one specific play not happened. So that moment in time particularly, and I remember exactly where I was. I literally vlogged it for you to put on your vlog.
That's right.
Hockey game. I was freaking out. But that moment stands out. But the Missouri game, for some reason, just really stands out for me. And I think it was the back and forth of it so much. And just South Carolina really gritting out that win. I think that's huge. It really speaks to the character of the team and the group as a whole, and just the way that they were able to work through some of those tougher moments. I don't know if in the past with other South Carolina teams you would have seen that happen as much, whether that would be with the tough play, getting back out there and putting something great together on your next offensive drive, or whether that's losing a tough game and then coming back out the next game and performing really well. Whatever it might be, I think that the team did a really, really great job with that this year. And the Missouri game was probably my favorite moment. But of course, you have to give a ton of credit to the Clemson game as well. My least favorite game was the only game that I attended at Williams-Brice this year, South Carolina and Ole Miss. That was like the big, down spot of the season, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, this is a really cool comment to see. Took your breath away. It was stressful in a lot of those situations. Definitely. I think a lot of us had high blood pressure in several situations this season, but that's what it's like watching any team. It doesn't matter if it's South Carolina or any other team. They're going to give you some of those moments. But hey, a great year for South Carolina. We talked about a lot of those players too, just throughout the season that have improved so much or impressed us. But if you had to give the award to one, and you can't pick offense or defense, you just have to pick somebody. It could be special teams as well. Who impressed you the most this year, Jack? I hope you don't take my answer. You probably will. It's a pretty easy answer.
Go first then.
Well, I was going to say Lenoris.
Oh, I wasn't going to say. I mean, I would say Lenoris, but I'm not going to. I'm going to be different. Go ahead and give your reasons as to why, though.
Well, I think Lenoris impressed me the most this year. I know he did, because the way he was able to develop throughout the season. And I think that that's something that's extremely underrated. And we have talked about this on the show multiple times throughout the year, but the way he started off the year and some of the flack that he was receiving from certain people was unbelievable. And just the way that he was able to tune that out and continue to progress and grow each and every week, obviously, thanks to a ton of determination on his end, but also that's a credit to great coaching as well. To see the way that he went from how he was at the start of the season to where he is right now and how he ended the season, even though I don't think the Citrus Bowl was his best game of the year by any means, but the way that he was able to end the season as a whole, that is what was most impressive to me. So he was my standout player this year. Obviously, South Carolina had a ton of players that were phenomenal throughout the entire year, super consistent, great additions. But Lenoris, to me, for the specific reason that we saw so much growth from him this year, and I am so excited to see what he does next year.
For sure. I definitely agree with you. It's hard not to give Lenoris Sellers the, best player on the team award, all this different stuff. For me, I'll go different, and I could go one of two ways with this. I could either go with a guy like Nicky Minwari, who, look, I know how his career at South Carolina ended is it's a painful subject to talk about for many, so I'm not going to talk about that. But I will say Nick had a great year. He'd probably be the player that I would pick for sure. But I'm going to go different here. Demetrius Knight Jr. I mean, what more can you say about this guy? If you're a recruit out there and you wonder what it would be like going to South Carolina and stuff, Demetrius Knight embodies what a year with the Gamecocks can do. You can turn you're not say he was a bad player by any means before this, but you can change the trajectory of your career coming to South Carolina for a year like he did. He's going to be an NFL draft pick. Heck, he's going to the Reese's Senior Bowl later this month and into February. One of the biggest, if not the biggest, bowl game for seniors out there. The most notable one for sure. He had a great year, obviously, made a lot of big plays. That's what's always going to stick out, like just the Clemson interception for sure, the one that he picked off Cade Klubnik at the end of the game. But he's just such a good dude too. Like he's a fun player you want to root for, and I definitely know for me, I'll definitely be interested in seeing how his career ends up. So South Carolina's defense had so many different playmakers. D Knight for sure, one of my favorites to cover for sure.
That is a phenomenal answer. I love that answer. He was fantastic. So much fun to watch this entire year. You could just tell. I mean, even down to the Citrus Bowl and his decision to play, like he set an example that was fantastic for this group. Obviously, such a veteran presence to bring in. And like you said, someone that is now leaving South Carolina and has such a bright future. And I think that's amazing. And we obviously wish him all of the best. I never had the chance to cover him, but loved watching him play. And I know you absolutely love to cover him as well. So a couple of names, but certainly those aren't the only two. There are plenty more that we could talk about that impressed us this year that were fantastic. And I'm sure we'll have the chance to talk about that a little bit more as we continue with these GC Lives. We're going to have to start talking about basketball and baseball here soon because we won't have as much football to talk about, but I think we can talk about some earlier. What do they always say? Like way too early predictions.
Yeah, we can always do that. We have so much time.
We can always talk about that. My favorite thing is like as soon as the World Series is over and ends at like 10 o'clock or whatever, and then at like 12 a.m. the next day, there's like an article like way too early season predictions.
You got the betting odds already out there for who's going to win it all. It's like, we don't even know what the rosters are going to look like next year. That's
exactly.
Exactly.
Well, Jack, before we get into talking about the transfer portal, any final thoughts about this 2024 team for South Carolina? We're going to talk about it, I'm sure, some more here on the show in the coming weeks. But just for now, your final thoughts.
Just in general, just a message, if anything. I hope you guys enjoyed this season. Like if you're watching, like seriously, this was a great season for South Carolina. Like I know they didn't get the bowl win. I know they didn't get to 10 wins, but that's not going to define how this season is viewed. Like this really could have been completely different. It could have been one of those years where they went 5-7 in 23 and they just continue to dig their own hole, but they dug out of it and made tremendous strides and improvements. And now we're talking about this program with such excitement and positivity and buzz going into 2025 and beyond. And, with the transfer additions they're bringing in, guys, we'll talk about here shortly. I'm excited about what's to come. But for sure, when we look back in a few years and we look back on how the rest of this decade went or, further beyond that with if South Carolina was winning games or not, we're going to look back at 24 as the year where it kind of all came together for Carolina. So great season, a lot of fun covering this team, and I'm really looking forward to spring ball and seeing what's next for this group.
Yeah, I think this year South Carolina received a lot of recognition that they deserved, and I think that was a great thing. Just a lot of positive recognition, especially from a national standpoint. And I know that's not everything, media coverage and whatnot, but if you are the Gamecocks, it's been a little while since you've been talked about really on a national stage like that at such a consistent level, and we saw that so much more with South Carolina, especially once they started to get things going towards the end of the season and put together so many wins and just were such a fun team to watch. I mean, I think at one point in the season, they were one of the most energizing teams. That was really towards the end of the season, but one of the most energizing and exciting teams to watch across the college football landscape, not just in the SEC, but across all of college football. And that's where you want to be if you're South Carolina, because obviously that ends up impacting so much more. And really, it's a year-round process. You have your season that lasts from September until December, but then you have so much more that's going on as well, including the transfer portal, which is happening right now. South Carolina in the thick of all things transfers, and we will talk about that in just a moment. But before we do, another sponsor to give a shout out to, Jack.
That's right. Let's talk about Prize Picks real quick, the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in all of North America. Easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports, just you against the numbers. So instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 players' stat projections. And then, of course, watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks has quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types. It's what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. I've used Prize Picks plenty in the past from personal experience. always love hopping on here and seeing what I can, get involved with to watch a game. We got NFL going on right now with the playoffs heating up here pretty soon. NHL's going on, college football semifinals with the playoff are going on tomorrow and Friday, and then the national championship after that. But there's college basketball, NBA, MLB around the corner. I mean, there's so many different things to choose from. So just go to prizepicks.com or download the PrizePicks app. Use the code on screen GC, that stands for Gamecock Central, to receive a guaranteed $50 once you play $5 in lineups.
Are you stressed about the Buffalo Bills?
A little. I mean, how can you not be? I mean, I think the Broncos are a good matchup. Good in the sense that it's going to be a good game, but a tough matchup nonetheless. And it's been a while since the Broncos have made the playoffs. So excited for Sunday. Glad the game is not on Saturday to interfere with basketball or anything. But I'm cautiously optimistic the Bills are going to get it done this weekend.
I want either the Bills or the Lions to win the Super Bowl.
I'm down with the Lions.
Either one. So
I'm down with the Lions. How can you not root for that team? They are fun to watch.
They're the best. I really, really enjoy watching the Lions. Of course, none of my teams are in, but I will give a shout out to the Panthers because they did end the season a lot better than we thought would happen. So we'll take it. I'm not complaining on that end. Maybe in a couple of years, the Panthers will be back in the playoffs. I'm not even going to get started on the Colts. My parents are from Indiana. I'm not talking about the Colts today. But anyways, Jack, we have more football to talk about. Of course, not NFL related. Although I will say, I know that I've brought this up on the show multiple times. I want to give you all an update. I did, in fact, win my 14-team fantasy football league. In my first year ever playing fantasy football, I've never played until this year in Team Darnold Palmer.
Let's go. That's
I don't even care about anything other than the fact that I won. People are like, oh, that's so great. Do you win money or whatever? I'm like, I literally just that I won. The bragging rights, because I do it with people that I work with, is 10 out of 10. So anyways, awesome. Quick little update. But let's talk about the transfer portal. A couple of big additions for South Carolina over the last couple of days. Big one that we already got a question about, so we will certainly start off with it here. Rasul Faison from Utah State, the number 7 ranked running back in the transfer portal. South Carolina was able to pick him up. He signed earlier today, announced his commitment yesterday. Actually, Wes and I did a recruiting rundown, which is going live here in just a little bit on GamecockCentral.com. So be sure to check that out because we talk in depth about all these players, what's next for South Carolina. But Jack, you have heard all about Faison. You've seen what he's been able to do, the additions that he could bring to South Carolina in this offense. So what do you think about this addition for South Carolina?
I love it. You had to, if you haven't already, Wes wrote a great story on the inside of the commitment of Rasul Faison on Gamecock Central. It's free, so definitely go ahead and check that out. You don't have to be a subscriber, but I highly recommend it. You had to, go up against schools like Florida State, Bama, UNC with Bill Belichick now, and Utah, all in the mix for Faison, who is one of the better running backs in this transfer portal cycle. And South Carolina is able to get it done. Obviously, they don't have – I wouldn't say it's a huge hole they have at running back because you have some good guys returning like Oscar Attaway, Jawarn Howell, Matthew Fuller. You have enough guys to where you can definitely get by with those 3 next year. But you would like to have another guy in there. You went after Justice Haynes from Alabama. He ended up going to Michigan. So this is who you get. I feel pretty good about it. And look, Faison comes from a group of 5 school at Utah State, but he ran for nearly 1,200 yards last year and 8 touchdowns. And I think I don't know if he's like the replacement for Rocket Sanders, essentially. I think what we'll end up seeing is a combination of Attaway and Faison getting the reps at the starting running back position next year, just splitting them up. But I think Faison could definitely be that guy that maybe morphs into that Rocket Sanders role that South Carolina is going to have to fill going into 2025. So definitely feel good about him. He's not the quickest running back from what I've read and seen, but he definitely could be a guy that is a hard-nosed runner and someone that definitely fits the mold of what South Carolina is going to need in that backfield.
Yeah, and we talk about it all the time, adding depth if you're South Carolina, continuing to stack position groups, because obviously that is so important. It separates good teams from great teams, being able to have that depth and kind of the next man up mentality, which is obviously what South Carolina is aiming for as they continue to add through the transfer portal and at the high school level as well. Based on what we've seen though so far, Jack, especially because we've been gone for a couple weeks. So obviously Faison not the only one that South Carolina has picked up in the transfer portal. There have been a handful more, but if you had to give them like a grade, I'll let you pick either a grade, because I know you like to do your grades, or scale of 1 to 10. Where do you feel like South Carolina is right now in terms of their success in the transfer portal?
Well, they're at double-digit signees, commits, whatever you want to call it. So I think so far, like, they've done a pretty good job of filling some holes for sure. Like, I think they are in a much better spot now than they were at the end of the 24 season, like, after the regular season ended, that is. And that's to be expected. Like, you're going out and getting new pieces because you're going to lose a lot next year. So I say next year, it's 2025, but I don't know if I can give like a specific grade on it because it's not fully done yet. However, I would say if on my excitement level or whatever you want to call it, I'm pretty pumped about what they're bringing in. It's hard to give a grade because, number one, we just don't know what these guys are going to end up being for South Carolina. Like, they could be busts, they could be Hall of Fame type players someday. We just don't know exactly. So for right now, just on the surface, I'd say I'm pretty happy about where South Carolina has filled and addressed their needs. I still feel like there's some more work to do, though, but they've definitely gotten better in some areas. Running back now, offensive line, I think they've addressed the holes on that line with losing 3 starters for next season, and we'll see what happens, but I feel pretty good about where they're at.
Well, Jack, South Carolina, obviously not done yet with the transfer portal. They are going to continue to push with this and continue to try to add. So where would you like to see South Carolina go with this as they try to continue to add on here with their transfer portal additions?
I think you want to see them continue. Here's a good comment that I pulled up earlier from Big Red, who says depth is always a good thing for Carolina. It's been an issue for years, and it wasn't an issue this year because they had so much talent returning, but they also brought in so many different guys. Like, they easily had, I can't even remember how many transfer portal pickups they had in the last cycle, but they had so many guys come in, easily double digits for sure. And so they're doing that now, and I feel like there's still a few more holes you want to address. I think the defensive line is an area where that's probably the one spot I feel like they need to continue to beef up a little bit. I know they've done that in recruiting so far this cycle, but I always feel like there's more to do because you're losing so many good guys. I mean, the only ones that we know are definitely returning are Monkel Goodwine and Nick Barrett on the interior, and then you got guys like Brian Thomas Jr. and Dylan Stewart on the edge. But I feel like you can never have too much depth is what I'm trying to get at. So defensive line's definitely a spot where I'd like to see a little bit more. And, if you can go out and get like literally any position, I'd be cool with them going out there and getting more. You can never have too many guys. So I think for right now, defensive line is probably the one area for sure off the top of my head that I feel like, get some more pieces and see what happens.
We've heard Shane talk about it a lot, just competition being a key value of the program. So all those guys coming in, and none of them are guaranteed really anything, just the opportunity to be able to compete for, more reps, more opportunities with this team and with the program. So we'll get into our way too early predictions for the 2025 season, probably on our next show. We just wanted to get on here really quickly because we hadn't been on in a couple of weeks. So it's been great to be back and see all of you. Jack, anything you would like to add before we go our separate ways today?
I've had a lot of fun coming back on here and talking. And look, a lot has happened, obviously, since the last time you and I both spoke on a stream. Like, the Citrus Bowl happened, the end of the season, all the antics that happened in that game, the portal continuing to be what it is. But I feel pretty good about where this team's at moving into the new season. We obviously haven't seen this group on the field yet. But from what we've seen, like, again, the spring game is going to be right around the corner. Obviously it's only a few months away. I'm really pumped about it. Really excited to see the direction this team goes. I'm not sure if it'll be on the same level as 24, but that's another discussion for another day. I think this team is going to have some success for years to come, and we'll see what these new additions can do.
We like that. We'll keep the positive vibes going here early on in 2025. We hope that you all had a wonderful holiday season. Happy New Year to all of you. How long can you say Happy New Year for? Like, at what point do you stop saying it? I feel like you can say it the first couple weeks.
Yeah, once you kind of get into the flow of things. Like, I think like MLK Day, post MLK Day, you could probably stop saying it. But, we're in the new year, and it's all good vibes right now and stuff. So I'm down with continuing to say it.
Well, Happy New Year. It is 2025, which means that South Carolina is just right around the corner from the 2025 football season. It really is true. Like, if you think about it, like, time always flies by so fast, and we will keep you updated on GamecockCentral.com. Follow us on social media at Gamecock Central. Follow Jack on X. He's always got a lot of great stuff over on his personal account as well. So be sure to stay up to date with everything you need to know on the South Carolina Gamecocks. It was so good to be back. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us here on GC Live. For Jack Veltri, I'm Kendall Smith, and we will see you next week. Bye.